Welcome, everybody. You're very welcome to this live event. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Gareth Dyke, and this presentation, Effective Journal Selection, planning your research so that you can get it published in high impact journals. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for coming along. I can see that there are lots of people from all over the world joining us today in our webinar room. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you have any feedback at all at any time, then please don't hesitate to put those comments, put that feedback into the chat box. You can see the chat box down there on the right hand side of our webinar Jam platform. So thank you again for joining us. This is Gareth Dyke, and this presentation, planning your research to publish in high impact journals. This is my academic background: University College Dublin, University of Southampton, University of Debrecen in Hungary, and working as a journal editor, a freelance trainer, a freelance publication consultant for a number of different companies: Springer Nature, Taylor and Francis, Editage, Inago, the Charlesworth Group, TopEdit. Thank you once again for your time, and thank you for joining us. You will be able to find out more information about me and about my background by clicking on the links at the bottom of this slide. As I mentioned, we are talking about effective journal selection in this presentation. What are we going to talk about in our presentation today? You may be wondering, what is it that we're going to talk about in our presentation today? Well, we are going to talk about three aspects of journal selection, impact, and impactful publishing in this webinar presentation today. First of all, we will discuss journal selection. Which journal should you pick for your next academic article, and how can you do that effectively as an author? Secondly, we will talk about maximizing your impact as a researcher, how you can do that through effective journal selection. And then thirdly, we will discuss how you can manage impactful publishing with your title and with your abstract. So journal selection, maximizing impact, title, and abstract. And you're probably thinking, what's the point of all of this? Well, the point of this training is to help you be more effective as an academic. Our goal is to help you understand the publishing process so that you can be more effective writing and publishing your work in English. So journal selection, maximizing impact, and impactful publishing through an effective title and an effective abstract. So why is this important? Why is journal selection and maximizing impact so important for you as a researcher? What do these two numbers mean to you? Well, there are about 30,000 academic journals around in the world at the moment. 30,000. And there are about 2 million, that's right, 2 million academic papers published each year. How can you even be expected to stand out amongst all of this content? How can you do it? Even within your own subject area, it's hugely difficult to make an impact. We are here to help you with strategies, with ideas, with publication suggestions, tips, and tricks that you can use to manage your impact, to make sure that your work stands out amongst the other publications that appear each year. And the first way to do this is with effective journal selection, the marriage between research and publication. And actually, Many researchers get this process the wrong way round. They write an article, they finish some research, and then they think, where am I going to get that work published? That is the effective way to do it, rather than writing up the study and then thinking, where can I get my work published? Finish the study and then think about your target journal. Have a target journal in mind before you start the writing process, because that will help you with the writing. It will help you with the structure. Many successful academics don't start to write until they have a target journal in mind. And how can you do this effectively? Well, you can do this by talking to others, talking to colleagues, and managing pre-submission inquiries. Finish a piece of research and then think, where can I get this work published? And of course, every journal is different. The kind of article that you might write will be different. So self-evaluate and think about where you can get your work published, or where you may be able to get your work published before you start that writing process. A marriage between research and publication. And so effective journal selection is hugely important. Thinking about accessibility, thinking about whether your target journal has an impact factor, and what does this mean? And we would encourage, of course, everybody to try to get their work published in journals with impact factors, and certainly be submitting your work to journals that are peer reviewed. Of course, there is no point publishing original research in a journal that doesn't use peer review. Lots of predators out there, lots of journals trying to take your money that don't have peer review, that don't use peer review, that don't have a reputable editorial board. So think about this question as well. Does your journal have an impact factor? Is it peer reviewed? Who's on the editorial board? And so successful researchers, they think about 4 key factors actually before selecting a journal. The impact factor, of course, the journal reputation, the reach that particular journal might have within a field, and what level of accessibility will their article have at the end of the day. Is the journal open access? Can they get their paper published open access or not? So 4 key things to think about when selecting a target journal: impact factor, reputation, reach within the field, and open access and accessibility. We will talk about these issues now. There are 3 rules to think about when selecting journals for your research. Keys to selecting an effective academic journal for your next publication. Aiming high, choosing appropriately, and letting us help you to learn to sell and manage that next submission to an academic journal. Aiming high, going for journals with higher impact factors if possible. Selecting appropriately, making those pre-submission inquiries to editors, talking to colleagues, talking to other people about where might be an effective journal choice for your next research project. And of course, not everybody with every piece of research can be targeting nature and science, but we can nevertheless look at strategies as researchers that we can use to get our work published in the best journals possible. And journals have different merits, of course. Authors think about different things to editors and peer reviewers. Authors want speed, they want reach and readership, and they want decent impact factors for their publications. We all want to publish as many papers as possible, as fast as possible, in the best journals possible, don't we? So we consider as authors the speed of publication. How many people are going to read those articles? So that links to open access, like how many people can even access my next academic paper, and indeed what is the impact factor going to be, because my institution my university will look at where I'm publishing my research, and they will use those journals as ways of assessing me as a researcher. It's also then, in terms of accessibility, important to consider open access or not. Is your journal going to be open access? This is a key consideration for lots of academic researchers. Let's understand the difference then in publishing, in traditional versus open access journal publishing, between gold and green open access journals. I finish a piece of research. I think about where I can get that work published, and I'm faced with a choice. Do I submit to Nature or to Science or one of these traditional journal publishers that work based on a subscription model, more or less, and the paper gets published, but not everybody around the world has a subscription to access that content? I may get a PDF personally that I can send out to my colleagues, but not everybody looking at that journal is going to have access to that content. Many journals have managed this by becoming green, for example. So you can pay an article processing charge, an APC, when you get your paper accepted, for example, by Nature, and then it will be open access. It's transformative, but the cost can be huge. Nature recently announced that it's almost €10,000 for you to get a paper published in Nature, fully open access. This is the green model for open access publishing, and of course it's way out of reach for most people. Also, gold open access publishing, that's where you submit your paper to a journal that only works based on that model, PLOS or Frontiers or the MDPI journals, to name but a few. The paper, once published, will be fully open access. Anybody can download it, anybody can access it, but there's a charge to you as an author to get your paper into that journal. So understanding open access is important. Most authors want their papers to be accessible to everybody. That's what we want as academics. We want people to be able to read and access our work, but we often can't afford the open access article processing charges that many journals may charge us, may put in front of us to get our work published into these journals. So I have some recommendations for you in terms of how you can speed up this process. Write to editors. Talk to them before you start to write your next paper. Target those journals and reach out to editors with pre-submission inquiries before you start to write. And indeed, I will provide you with an email template at the end of this webinar to do that. I do this all the time with my own work. I finish something, I think, where would the journal be appropriate for me to submit this work to? Which journal could I use for this work? And I make a list of 5 or 6 or 10 or 15 potential target journals for this particular piece of research before I start to write. I then send emails to the editors of those journals and I say, would you be interested in considering this piece of work that I've just finished as a submission to your journal? And they may come back and say, great. More often than not, they come back and say, no, but we have another journal within our family that may be suitable. That's great. Or they come back and they say, yes, that's wonderful. Please submit to our journal. And then you're already ahead of the curve. You're already ahead of the game in the publishing process. You're already inside the head of your academic editor. So you can speed up that process by making those pre-submission inquiries. You don't commit yourself to anything. You can email 15, 20, 25, 30 or more journal editors and ask them if they'd be interested in your work before starting to write. And of course, once you've done that, once you've got a journal ready, teed up, if I can use a golf analogy, ready to look at your submission, you are ready to start the writing process. And speeding up manuscript writing is also important. There are 3 key things to know before you start to write: your message, your audience, and your structure. The message, that's what you want people reading your academic paper to get out of that study. What's the key take-home message, the key significance of your piece of work? The audience, that's the target journal. That's the readership of the journal that you've selected to make your submission. And that, of course, gives you the structure of your writing: message, audience, and structure. And then, of course, we can start talking about targeting and maximizing your publication impact. With effective writing and submission, how will you maximize the scholarly impact of your article? And of course, academic impact is important. Which journals you select for your work, the impact factor, how many readers they have. But increasingly, universities around the world, research institutions, governments, grant funding agencies are thinking also about your economic and your societal impact. What difference is your work making to the lives of ordinary people? So when we write promotion letters, or when we write job applications, or when we apply for grants, when we talk to people about our research, don't just think about your academic impact. Also consider what difference your research is making to the lives of ordinary people. However, publications remain at the heart of academic impact. Researchers count papers. Impact factors, we look at things like the R index, the H index, and of course, institutions are interested in citations and circulation. Does your research circulation, however, translate to impact? This is a very important thing to think about. And also, how many researchers are actually going to read and cite your work? Of course, the impact factor as a metric is debated, and its coverage in some disciplines is certainly far from perfect. Arts and humanities, business and law researchers tend to hate impact factor based assessments of their research, because the impact factor, it's based on Scopus database coverage for journals. And as you can see, there's very limited numbers of journals available to our colleagues working in some research fields. So why would it be fair to assess them based on impact factor? Nevertheless, it's important to be aware of citation analysis when selecting journals and when measuring your impact as an author. This is, in effect, an article or a publication's number of times that has been cited by other works. At least be aware of how the process works, and be aware of the kinds of tools that people use to look at you as a researcher and assess your citation rate. The Web of Science, Scopus, Google Scholar, ORCID, identification numbers, for example, are ways in which you will be looked at by other researchers when they come to assess your academic impact. And academic impact, it's important, it's increasingly important, as you can see on this slide, even though researchers find it less and less of a thing that they want to worry about. Institutions, governments, grant funding agencies are still very interested in looking at and assessing you based on your academic impact. But how you design, how you represent, how you engage your early impact, and how you reflect and sustain on your research as a professional academic is also so important. Let's think about talking about our research to colleagues in ways that are engaging. Tobacco. I could write a paper about tobacco molecular genetics that nobody else wants to read, apart from the 5 or 6 other people in the world who work on that topic. Or I could write a paper that incorporates those results that I have as a researcher, but that engages with far more people. Let's think about broadening our impact and looking at our research in a way that makes it interesting to other people, stepping back from our particular small research areas, our individual research topics, and finding ways to have impact that's relevant to more and more people. Here's a checklist that you can use to manage your impact throughout the research process, during the project, on publication, and looking at what's happening with your research on an ongoing basis. Know your channels, talk about your research, blog and post and engage with people, and make sure that people are aware of your research as a broader picture around the world, managing your impact as a researcher and thinking about impact in research as a journey, not just doing what I used to do. When the paper gets published, you then look at where it's getting cited, which blogs it's being picked up on. Talk about your research all of the time. Think about your impacts, activities, outputs, outcomes, and impacts across that research project journey. And we can give you strategies to engage with the public, because people are doing this more than ever before, but often they have no idea how they benefit the people that they're interacting with. It's so important to evaluate your public engagement as a researcher. Assess your impact. Know about how many people share your work, mention your work, click on your websites, click on your PDFs, views of your articles, downloads, your press coverage, and also your citations. Most researchers only care about the citations at the end of the process, and develop a skill set to talk about your research in the context of stories that people are interested in, selling your research to journals, talking to editors about your research. Why is your work relevant to wider groups of people? This is the key to helping you get your work published in those leading journals. As Terry Pratchett used to say, people like to be told what they already know. The story of your research has to bring somebody to the end of your paper and make them think, I agree with that. I expected that. I find that outcome, that result, to be as I expected. That's what I wanted to see. Peer reviewers will agree with your studies. They will give you favorable responses in research review. Research is mostly incremental. This is the reason people like to be told what they already know. Large steps, large unexpected results are much harder to get published in the literature. So prepare to write. Think about the structure of a full academic article as two independent sections: the title and the abstract, and the rest of the paper. The title and the abstract are key. These are often the only bits of academic writing that other academics are gonna read, especially editors, especially peer reviewers who are assessing your work for publication. So put the energy and effort into your title and into your abstract. I'm not saying that you shouldn't work on the rest of the paper too, but this is a distinct piece of writing. The main text, the IMRAD structure, that has a distinct function as compared to the main title and the abstract of your work. So what goes into a good title? It's got to contain the fewest possible words to adequately describe the contents of your article, and keep it short. The main issue, the subject, accurate, unambiguous, specific, and complete, and attract people's attention. Keep the title short, get people interested in reading your work. So make it compelling, concise, and informative. Most important words: entice your reader, allure them, get them wanting to read more. This is so important in effective title writing. And also the abstract, 200 words of content that summarizes your work. All of the information in the abstract so that the reader, the editor, the peer reviewer can understand what you did. The quality of an abstract informs an editor's decision. So how are you going to do that? Many authors write their abstracts in a rush almost as an afterthought. And of course, this has to be a concise, standalone piece of writing with a very clear message that accurately, comprehensively reflects everything that you did. So think about the 4-question-based technique for writing an effective abstract. Answer these questions with your own content from your own study, and then delete the questions. And that will give you 100, 150 words of content you can use as the basis for your next abstract. Why did you do the study? Answer that. What did you do? Answer that. What did you find? And what did you conclude? Why did you do it? That's the aims. What did you do? That's the methods. What did you find? That's the results. And what did you conclude? That's the discussion, the significance, and suggestions for future work. Structure in academic writing is the most crucial element. Like reading a book, watching a movie, readers need to know where they've come from, where they are now, and where they are going. Your structure comes from your target journal choice. That's your audience. Your message is the other component of the whole story. Things to do before you start then: choose your topic, identify your audience, and know about the 3 things that you have to have in mind before starting to write a research paper: your message, your audience, and your structure. Roadmaps for successful academic publishing then include preparation, selling yourself to an editor with your clear message, with your pre-submission inquiry, as we've discussed in this webinar, your structure, and effective writing. We can teach you how to be effective in English academic writing. It's a skill, not a talent. It's possible to learn how to be effective in English academic writing. Thank you for listening. We have talked in this presentation about journal selection, maximizing your impact, and how to write a title and an abstract, impactful publishing. I hope that the content in this webinar has helped you to be more effective as an academic. Thank you for listening. We will see you in our next presentation. Have a great day.